two different terms, same cut. So let's do bâtonnet real quick. Once again, use the cutting board or something to line it up nice and square. That was really kind of wedge shape there. So we can line this up with these two, hopefully very parallel to each other. Got the ends. Quarter inch in the front and in the back. I'm checking, I'm looking directly down over the knife. Okay, not just on the these. I want to pick the best side, and this one has a little nick on the back side, so I'm going to remove a little of that so that I can then cut nice square pieces. And you can see at the last one there, I'm not going to include that because where these are square, this is not. That's going to be rectangular, these pieces. Slight, but it's there enough. And this one here, I don't like that one. And the derivative cut from bâtonnet is what?
Small dice.
Small dice. So from these, small dice, squares, cubes. Okay. Let's do our next one, a smaller one. Exactly the same procedure. We need to get that cube, that block out of the potato. Watch out for stuff like that. Don't use that. If you get a funky potato, don't use it. So exactly the same cut, only we're doing a quarter of the dimension here. Okay, so 1/8 of an inch, front to back, and straight down. If you get pieces that have that funky stuff in them, don't use them. Once you get them cut, you don't want to try to cut a big stack like that too much. I mean, you can get away with it, but they tend to move around and make them a lot less consistent. So these here, you can see my ends are not square to each other. So I'm going to fix this end here. Before I start cutting my finished pieces here. So once again, 1/8. So the idea with these is the same thing. They should be square on the end. Let's see, I have a couple of rectangles here. It's a good square on one end, rectangular on the other. And then if they are to be this dimension, right, they're half that dimension. Same length, but if these are 1/4, these are 1/8. So if I take 4 of these, let's take 4 of these here. Good square ones here. These are Allumette Julienne, 1/8 by 1/8 by 2 to 3 inches. These 4 here, if I stacked 4 together, should match up with that, right? Because they're half the dimension. If this is 1/4, this is 1/8, right? So that's where this is 1/4, that's 1/8. And then if we cut this into cubes, then we get what's called a brunoise. Okay, same thing. So 8 of these would equate to a single of these, right? 1d4 on the bottom, 1d4 on top. Okay, so new cut, Julienne, brunoise. Let's cut some onions too. I maybe didn't point this out enough yesterday, but for all of these type of cuts, there should never be peel or, you know, like those spots where there was whatever it was in there. Don't use it, okay? If the cut needs to be this precise cut, make it exactly that. Don't use carved off ends or a little bit of peel on the end, okay? Some folks will argue for yield, that is not throwing this in the trash can but using it, and that's why we're going to use this for like all those little scrappy pieces here, which is perfectly edible, and we'll make some french fries out of this stuff. But if the intention is to have brunoise or bâtonnet or small dice or, you know, Julienne or any of those cuts, then they should be completely clean. Nothing on the skin, nothing like little damaged pieces of the flesh. So that goes for all the cuts, okay? Perfectly clean. You're going to work plenty of places maybe that it's acceptable to have peel on the ends or on the sides of this, and that's fine, but that's by design. It's intentional, that's an aesthetic value of the kind of plate they're producing, or presentation value that they want. So let's do the onion. We're going to do I'm going to show you a whole bunch of onion cuts, and then you guys are going to slowly keep working on them over the next week or two. So for all of these bulk vegetables here, we've got shallots and garlic and onions and a couple different vegetables that have a root end down here, and that's where the roots were. And then they have a blossom end, usually called a blossom end. That's where the plant growth came from, this end. Okay? And that matters because there are certain cuts that are going to depend on what part you might leave intact or remove, or the way that you hold the product and the direction of the cut. So right away we're going to do a couple different cuts that matter greatly in terms of the angle of the cut to the vegetable material itself. Most of these vegetables have a certain amount of fiber or texture to the way that they grow. And that's going to affect not only the way they look, but the way that they, not taste necessarily, but the way that they hit our palate, the texture of them, how they behave when we cook them. So it matters whether if I ask for sliced onions for French onion soup, or sliced onions for making onion rings or some something like that, it matters whether they were cut one direction or the other. Onion rings bags for salad or something. Tossing a little sliced onion in the salad. Cutting them this way is going to handle differently than cutting them that way because of the texture of the vegetable. So let's start with dicing an onion. So that's particularly difficult because remember that a dice is a defined shape, right? It's a square shape. Well, it's pretty easy to get a square shape out of a vegetable like potato that I can whittle down to a square shape and then cut little cubes out of it. Onion, not so much, right? Because it's a round vegetable. So I'm taking the end off, very little off of the root end here, a little bit more off of the stem end because there tends to be a little bit of dirt in there. And then I'm going to cut it in half. Can one of you guys grab that whiteboard and drag it over here? Because that might help. That might help us explain. Help me explain what I'm doing with this thing. So another thing about cutting onion or shallot or garlic or any of these products is that no peel. Not even a little bit. Not even a teeny tiny little bit. Because that's going to jank up your sauce. Does not cook, does not break down during cooking, floats on the top, sticks to the pan and burns. No peel at all. Okay? And some of this, it's kind of hard to tell sometimes. These outer layers are super thin. That's peel, should be removed. Okay? We just want these meaty, thicker layers. Okay? So let's look at some of these cuts real fast. Here's our onion. If you look at it from the end, you can see that here's our half an onion. And it has all these layers, right? So we have to be able to cut a square shape out of that. That means we've got to use a series of cuts. And obviously we're never going to get a cubical shape like this, but we can get a square shape. And that's the difference between diced and minced or chopped. So somebody might ask you, I need some chopped onion. That means take this, well, I'll show you chopped onion, but that means just chop the thing up. Doesn't matter what it looks like. They might say fine chop, or they might say rough cut, or they might say minced, but all those cuts are random cuts. They just mean just kind of chopped up. If they say diced, that means I need a perfectly uniform cut. So once again, why do we want it to be perfectly uniform?
So it all cooks the same way.
Cooks this, wait, what did you say?
Cooks evenly in the
It
same way.
cooks uniformly, and it looks uniform. Right, so that's particularly important. Now, even if I minced some shallots to use on a sauce, they're all about the same size. They're going to look the same. So that uniformity is still important, even though it's a rough cut, a random cut, chopped. But my application might demand, in one case, I really want to have perfectly shaped product, and another application doesn't matter so much. For making risotto, it can be finely chopped, minced even. You're not going to be able to see it in the finished product, but it will cook uniformly, and if you can see it, it will look uniform to you. If I'm doing it in a salad or a vinaigrette or something, well, then it's going to be very visually impactful. So then I may choose to do a dice, a small dice of romaine, instead of chopping, right? So to make a dice of onion, we've got 3 cuts, okay? Because we have this weird round shape. So the first cut is a horizontal cut, which means we're going to cut it not like that. Cut up like this. Uniformly. And then we're going to cut it vertically. All of these being about the same dimension. And then the last cut, I can't really draw this one, I'll show you, is that once we've done this and that, then we can cut it off the end and get our square shapes. Okay? So that's the dice. Let's draw another picture real quick. For our 2 slicing of the onion, which means either a half moon slice, which really just means this is the end of the onion there, and we're going to cut right off the end. Or the little bit more delicate, I think, and attractive and uniformity of shape cut, which is a julienne cut, which means we're going to cut it end to end, stem to blossom. Okay. So for that one, we want to cut it in such a way that all the pieces are a uniform shape. So, no, we don't cut it like this. Because look at these. Right? They're not gonna look the same. I'll show you in a second. Yes. Get the picture? They're going to be far more uniform in length and dimensions all around than cutting it vertically like that. So let's whack them up and see what I'm doing. Okay, so the first one is dicing of onion. Okay, this one is going to take a lot of practice. Please be careful with this. The first cut is to cut it horizontally. So for now, we'll do the same sort of medium dice, right? Or you could start with a larger dice. You could start with, this is small dice. We could start with medium dice, which is one step larger. So let's do a couple of horizontal cuts, which means that's where my knife hand is. I can't do this here. Can you see why?
Because your knuckles.
Look, my hand is in the way. I can't even get the knife in place, right? So that's why, don't do what I'm doing right now, but just to show you, that's why my hand is out here over the edge of the board so that I can get the blade perfectly horizontal, uniform shape. Okay, so that's why we're going to cut off the edge of the board here, and I'm holding it. Look how I'm holding it. We had the claw, now we've got the palm, yeah, whatever. We're holding it here so that if my knife slips, it doesn't end up in here or in here or any of the other various places we don't want it to be. So I get my knife nice and parallel and I'm cutting back, but not all the way, just about there, because it'll hold together here. So that was one, and then I measure up about the same distance and we'll do another cut. Through there. Maybe we'll get one more out of here. Okay, so those are my horizontal cuts, 2 or 3. Start with 2 or 3. And then we need to do our vertical cut. So we'll keep this thing oriented like that. So that is here. And the spacing here needs to be the same as it was there. If I did about 1/4 of an inch between cuts here, it should be 1/4 of an inch between cuts here. Again, not going all the way back, because I want to keep that back intact there. Get these stragglers out of the way. And then the final cut off the front there. Same thing, same spacing. Touch it, align it front to back, hit the board, and follow through. Okay, so you can see here the uniformity of that cut, right? You're not going to get perfect squares out of an onion because it's a round vegetable. I put all those on the sheet, but we might not cut all of them. But I do want to show you some chopped stuff. We'll do the one large. Drive me insane. Okay. I'm one of those people that, like, if something is rattling in the car, I will pull over on the highway and find out what it is. Yeah, it's really obnoxious. So, large dice. This is small dice. We can really do medium. Save all these goodies here. Now, if somebody just said, I need chopped onion, chopped, and then if they ask for mince, you're gonna really record me crying.
I intentionally should.
I'm not getting your face.
The violin background.
You still need the music on, Chip.
I just love onions. The thing with the onions, right, so that's a reaction between chemicals in the onion and oxygen. A lot of the products we work with react with oxygen when they hit the air. So refrigerated onions are a little bit easier to work with. We don't tend to refrigerate our onions because they actually hold better unrefrigerated. But and the sharper your knife, the less you're going to experience that. Wetting your cutting board. There's an old kind of, it's not really a lifestyle thing because it actually does work, but holding a book of matches in your mouth with the matches right under your nose, because the sulfur in the matches counteracts the onion reaction.
I'm gonna want to let
It does work, but it's not practical enough to really actually do it. Just suck it up. Cry. Okay, so
Okay.
this is chopped, right? This is just chopped onion, but we would call this minced. And there's gradient of that. And as we go forward, we'll chop several different products. We'll mince several different products. Citrus and onion and shallot and parsley, herbs, several different things. But the primary thing I need you to understand is the difference between what is a defined cut, like small dice, medium dice, brunoise, or a random cut, which is chopped. Chopped is just like brunoise is to diced as mince is to chopped. Does that make sense? Just a very small chop. So let's look at sliced here. Half moon. The thickness does not matter as much as long as it's consistent, right? It matters for your application. If you're going to cut big, clunky, fat pieces like that, maybe that's fine. If that's how you want it to look, and that's what you're doing with it, that it's appropriate for it to be that thick, that's great. But for you guys, I want you to practice probably a 1/8 thickness for most of this stuff, okay? So that means cutting thin pieces, and the same thing. For this one, we can plant your knife up front there. That takes a little bit of practice, it feels awkward. But planting the front of the blade, this is one of the reasons it's very important to keep your workstation clean. If there is a little something up there, even a little something like that, you could plant your blade and it would slip, okay, and you could cut yourself. So, half moon cuts mean just that when we cut this thing, all of these pieces are the same shape, but different size. So they're all going to have this 180-degree half moon shape, but obviously I got little ones, I got big ones, everything in between. So that's half moon, also known as salad cut. These are usually not cooked. They can be, but usually, like if somebody says, I need you to slice a bunch of onions, your first response should be, how do you want to cut? 'Cause that versus this makes a big difference depending on what we're going to use them for. Notice that I left the stem here, see that little piece of the stem? Intact for both of those cuts. For the dicing, because I want that little nub of the end to hold on to while I'm dicing it. For slicing half moon, because same thing, I want to hold on to that. For this last cut, for julienne, I don't want that there. If I cut, well, I should have just shown you with that one. If I cut a piece lengthwise here, and it's still attached by that stem nub, it's not going to separate it into individual slices. Does that make sense? Somebody throw me another onion, I'll show you. So for this one, for julienne, we need to remove the stem, and then we're going to cut it. And this is the one here where we don't want to do this, and I'll show you. If I cut pieces here from that end with the stem still intact, see? They're all attached because of that stem piece. I don't want that. It's a rare application where somebody might prefer to have that in place, but don't throw it on the floor. For the most part, you don't want to have that there. So don't do that. Let's look at this. So just like this little diagram here, if I cut this vertically, here's what. I'm just cutting, instead of across the grain, I'm cutting with the grain long ways. If I cut it straight down, and even very uniform thickness, let's look at what we have here. Look at these pieces. The whole point of this cut is to get very uniform shape, okay? So that's why, rather than cutting vertically with each slice there, end to end, we have to angle our blade. So we're still holding the blade exactly the same as normal, okay? Everybody keep working on that. Hold it like this. But instead of cutting vertically here like that, now I'm going to angle it this way so that the cuts go in at an angle. And you see, they started low and they will move up as I go around the product. So that when I get to the top here, it's almost vertical. And I'm just dropping stuff on the floor all over the place. So this is a no-no. Look at all these random kind of big, awkward pieces. Versus this cut.
Listen.
Where you see everything, all of these pieces are almost exactly the same shape and size. And that's much, much preferable visually, texturally. and for cooking. If I'm making French onion soup, I want this cut because they'll break down better because of the texture of the vegetable, the fibers in here. This cut doesn't work. It'll make a much chunkier soup. On the other hand, this has a nice visual effect to it, so I might want this for salads or uncooked applications. This is nice for salads too, but can you see here the difference between angling my knife and cutting straight down? Look at just those two. It's exactly the same thing, except for this was vertical and this was with the angled blade. Very, very important for julienne. This is sloppy. That's proper precision knife. Okay. So, what time is it? It's 7:45. We maybe have 45 minutes to cut. So, add in some smaller potato cuts. Start doing some onion cuts. There's plenty over there. There's probably at least 2 onions a person over there. And around about 8:30, we'll start wrapping it up, cleaning up. And I lost my little schedule where I had you guys all assigned to stations. I'll redo it and post that up there on the board later. But for now, for tonight, at 8:30, we're just going to start. You guys know what needs to happen.
Yes, Chef.
Jump on something and make it happen.
Yes, chef.
Okay? Any questions?
No, chef.
Over here. Never, never, never try to catch a falling blade. Okay? I don't know if that's what happened with the finger, but if a blade is, if a knife is falling, get out of the way. Okay?